quarterback, to Hollywood, to the mayor's office, and now behind the mic at KXEX. This is the Alan Autry Show. No retreat.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
What the hell's going on out here? Everybody grabbing out there. Nobody.
That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
So, 5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Free at last! Free at last! Thank God Almighty!
You're listening to the Alan Autry Show on the best talk in town. Talk Radio 1550 KXEX. Call Alan now, 559-899-1550.
And welcome to Alan Autry No Retreat. I'm Alan Autry, so honored and humble as I am every day that I get the blessing to be with you for this hour from 12 to 1 p.m. here, West Coast time, live. Man, live. I'll never forget the time I did my first live sitcom. Actual audience up there. You know, no room for error. You tell a joke, they don't laugh. You got to burrow through it. It's like, anyway, a whole different thing than where you can say, cut, can I have another one? And do 15, 20 takes to get it right in live radio. But I like to do it live. I really do. I don't like to edit things out. I like it to have that flow, that feel, that energy. And boy, did we have it Friday. My goodness. Lot of feedback on the email that we have here, official email at KXEX, Alan, KXEXradio.com. No, I think it's Alan at KXEX.com. Radio. But it was on the subject of Roe versus Wade being declared unconstitutional and pushed back to the states. And the debate rages, and it did on this show. And I have, as I said, gotten a lot of feedback in the community here from the radio audience as well as the other modes of communication to get to me. And I want to clear a few things up. First of all, I knew when we went into this subject that it's that the risk that you're taking. The conversation we had was it was a tough one for a lot of folks because they feel so deeply one way or the other. Either the protection of the unborn being something that's highly emotional, a lot of empathy involved with that. And those that protecting a woman's right to choose. And in a way, they're both right. I guess that's why people don't really discuss it. They avoid it. And especially men. And it's time for the men to stop hiding. Yeah, I said it, hiding, as if you don't have a voice in this. That's been a problem that's plagued this country for a long time now. A man can go and, really coerce a woman, girlfriend, a wife, or whatever, to get an abortion. They walk away. I don't want to be a part of that fight. It's her. It's her. It's her problem. No, you're a potential father. You have a say in this as well. But I will admit, how you say that, how you phrase your input has to be done very carefully, with thoughtfulness and mindfulness. And that's just the way it is. Because the woman, you ladies out there, you mothers, carry that child, if you choose to keep it, for the full 9 months or a little more or a little less. That's a very, very special responsibility that you have. And in the second half of the show, I want to talk a little bit more about that, about responsibility from a father's standpoint and a mother's standpoint as it relates to this whole issue of Roe versus Wade and abortion in general. But there was some things said. I think I haven't had a chance to watch the show or listen to the show. But I know, Laura called up, and there's others that emailed me that said it was kind of tough in my phrasing and how I came back and gave my opinions on the issue. And I do want to apologize to Laura and anybody else, because I've done this a couple other times where I haven't let someone finish their sentence, and I hate when people cut me off. And I know you all hate that. You're trying to explain it your position to somebody, and you have a point you're getting to, and if you don't get to it in 5 seconds, somebody interrupts you. That's just this instant gratification. Nobody has patience anymore, including me. And I have to really tell myself, times to sit back and listen. I trumpet that quality. I promote that quality to listen all the time, and yet I break my own rules sometimes. I guess that's just called being human, but I want to use that Friday show as an example to get better, because I think that was probably the most egregious thing, at least in my estimation so far, that I did. Because when you discuss this issue of abortion, trust me, the kind of heated, contentious, passionate debate, whatever you want to call what happened Friday, it's a conversation, and those type of things happen. You have hurt feelings because, as I said, it's loaded with emotion. But let's not kid ourselves. What happened on this show is happening all over this country, not just between political parties. What's going on right now? Look up at Fox News and CNN. All of this side picking on this, and people politicizing it and arguing about it and making it a midterm issue and that sort of thing. We'll see how that plays out, if it's going to be a major issue in determining who people vote for. But it's an issue that, rest assured, is going to cause some angst, some heartache, and some dissension with friends, families, within families. That type of discussion we had on Friday was at dinner tables all over this country. Friends who have a lot in common. Maybe 90% of the things they talk about, I agree with you on that. Yeah, you got a point there. They agree. But they get to this subject of abortion, and they don't agree. And so you're left with two choices as a society. Either let that fear of maybe discussing something that's very difficult to discuss and losing a friend or straining a relationship with a friend, a family member, or what have you, where you say to yourself, this issue is just too dang important. We need to discuss it. We need to know what's in each other's hearts and stop and listen to each other. And I think what happened, the biggest transgression that happened on that show, for my estimation so far, and you're open, please email me, because I don't mean to disrespect anyone. I don't want to hurt intentionally anybody's feelings on any subject, even especially people like Laura, Melanie, Lane, Rick out there, a lot of folks. But I promised you we weren't going to shy away from difficult subjects, because my goodness, we're in the most difficult time, I think, in the history of this country. If this country is going to remain the country founded on faith, family, and freedom that the founders intended, it's under attack from every one of those qualities, all three of them, under tremendous attack. And we're going to have to fight for it. And part of that is maintaining that freedom, not only the freedom to have open discussion that might get a little hot and heated sometimes, and the commitment to engaging in that, to be willing to go in and have that difficult conversation. Because for me personally, those who sent me the email, well, I was too tough and talked over Laura, I'm going to take that criticism back, and I have, since I've gotten these emails, and I think I can become a better person, a better communicator as a result of that. But what I won't do is back away from this commitment I've made to y'all. So however long God lets me do this hour, we're not going to be afraid to discuss those subjects. We can't. We have to be, as in the Bible, God told Joshua, be of good courage, be courageous, and not in a way that you're building yourself up, trying to John Wayne everything or Jane Wayne everything. Just being courageous to be able to tackle the tough subjects, do it in a respectful way, have these kind of conversations, and not let it divide us. I just think out of that comes good. It moves us together stronger as individuals and as families and as a country as a whole. Now, the problem we've gotten into in this country is everybody says, well, let's have those difficult discussions, but they never do. That usually means, all right, let's have this difficult national discussion on abortion, this difficult national discussion on the border, the difficult national discussion on how big government should be in terms of intrusiveness in life, in our lives. Everybody's out there, parroting that, saying they want that. But really, when you look at it, there's no place to find it. None of the networks are doing it. What it really means is, let's sit down, let me tell you how I feel about a certain subject, and if you don't agree with me, then I'm going to vilify you, yell at you, call you names, and try to cancel you. And that's starting to drift over on both sides. I'd say predominantly on the left, heretofore, but you see people on the right totally discount, like this AOC. She said something the other day, just today, the Supreme Court's invalid and that sort of thing. And you got to hear her out. I disagree vehemently, but you got to hear her out. So anyway, I want to take this time before, because we got a lot to talk about. Another major Supreme Court decision today, but I just want to make clear that important thing, the most important thing to me, that I didn't intentionally hurt anybody's feelings, and if I did, my apologies. And let's just make a commitment to, it'll be your choice. And I'm not just speaking for Laura. I have all the respect in the world for Laura. I remember one thing I said to maybe kind of harsh, you mentioned Eleanor Roosevelt. I respect Eleanor Roosevelt, but sincerely, I'm more interested in what Laura has to say. I didn't know Eleanor Roosevelt. I'm sure she was great in her time. I read some of her quotes. She was a champion for women. I give her credit for that, and I don't demean her at all. But she's not here anymore. And, Laura and folks like her are here that I respect so much. And whether I agree with everything that Laura or anybody else says, if I know they're coming from their heart and they've done their homework, I want to hear from them. That's who I want to hear from. But we had another major decision today in the Supreme Court. It's getting kind of lost with all of the controversy on Roe versus Wade and the firestorm that started. Now, I guess there's courts all over the country going to challenge it. I don't know how a lower court can challenge a Supreme Court decision. That's why they call it Supreme Court. But we're going to talk again a little bit back about that in the second hour here. But the Supreme Court today just made an announcement. Neil Gorsuch wrote a majority opinion that said that a school district cannot stop a school employee, in particular a teacher or a coach, from praying in school at their job out loud and around students. That is protected by free speech, and it's not a violation of church and state. This is huge. I mean, this Supreme Court is far from what the critics are trying to label them as an out-of-control legislating from the bench. Absolutely not. They're just correcting previous court decisions that clearly were legislated from the bench. That there's no constitutional, let's take Roe versus Wade, for example. In 1973, that Supreme Court ruled that it was constitutional to say that every woman had a right to an abortion. There's nowhere in the Constitution that says that. The amendment that those who supported that decision was Amendment 14th under the Due Process Clause, the privacy and the privacy clause in the Constitution. That's such a huge stretch. It's almost laughable. And no other than Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the Ruth sisters coming at you. Yes, that Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the darling of the left, and by all accounts, a really decent human being. Her and Judge Alito were good friends, real hard, right conservative and a liberal, yet they had a lot in common. They're best friends. But, no, it's Scalia, not Alito. It's Anton Scalia. They're best friends. But even she said there's going to be a day of reckoning, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but not much, with this this law that they said was constitutional, that you could have pretty much not abortion on demand. There are some caveats in Roe versus Wade that people don't talk about that says you just can't walk in at 9 months and have or 8 months and have an abortion. But she said it's strictly constitutionally, from a legal standpoint, that this ruling that they made in 1973 was on really, really shaky ground, and really went to the point of saying there's probably not a case good enough legally to warrant it being able to withstand a challenge that she said eventually would happen, because it was so egregiously wrong in terms of where that argument should be settled. It was clear it should go back to the states and the people vote on it. And there's also a way in Congress to override the Supreme Court, but it's the people's elected officials to do that, not the 9 Supreme Court justices. That's why the Founding Fathers separated 3 co-equal branches of government: Supreme Court, the legislative branch, Congress, the House of Representatives, and the Senate, and the presidency, the executive branch. And the judicial branch was sole purpose was to interpret the Constitution. When there's an argument, a disagreement on what the Constitution says in terms of being applied to a particular issue, it works its way up the judicial food chain. And if the Supreme Court thinks it is worthy, that importance is of such a nature that they should address it, then they address it on purely constitutional grounds. Where does the Constitution land? Or this side or that side? That's it. They weren't put together to legislate from the bench. Now, here's the problem with the argument being made there, that these 9 justices should forget about the Constitution. It's not really it's a fluid document. It's constantly changing. So they believe that the 9 Supreme Court justices not only have the power to interpret the Constitution, the laws that come forward, they also have the power to make laws. Okay? So what they really want is 9 unelected officials to rule on very, very important aspects of law that affect us daily, in some cases dramatically in our lives, whether to be able to carry a gun, speak our mind freely. Very important things if you value a democracy and you value liberty. If you don't, it's a whole different discussion. Okay? But here's the problem. If you leave with that thinking, you talk about the law. We're a nation of laws. If you don't have laws, you have chaos. Okay? But the people decide through the representatives what laws they want to have, what they don't want to have. And if you let these judges start making law, you really don't have law anymore until the judges rule. Because you won't know what the law is until the judges decide what the law is. You kind of follow me on this? It's a very, very valid point, and I haven't heard anybody on the left or who wants to give this type of enormous power to make laws to the Supreme Court, because that's what this battle is all about. They want the Supreme Court to go in there. Hey, forget that Ruth Bader Ginsburg and every scholar that studies the Supreme Court and our Constitution are saying that this issue of abortion is not covered in the Constitution. There's no way to rule on it for 9 judges because there's nothing there to apply it against. And the Constitution clearly states if you find yourself in that situation, you 9 Supreme Court justices, it goes back to the states and they handle it with the people. But you got to understand that if we give them that power, we will never know what the law is until these 9 people rule on it. And if you get Elizabeth Warren's way, and a lot of others on the woke far left, they want to just add 4 more judges. Well, then what's that going to do? Then you get a Republican president, they add 4 more. Then you get a Democratic president, then they add 4 more. The next thing you know, you've got 50, 60, 100 judges unelected, put in place through this political partisanship with no way to vote them out. It's a lifetime appointment. Okay? Think about that for a while. Those 9 Supreme Court justices, those 9 have done this country well. Yes, they've made mistakes. There's a way to go repeal a decision. But you got to make sure you go through the right process. There's a way to do that, and we've done it. Plessy versus Ferguson, horrible thing, racism. That was overturned. Yeah, we can go in another show of what that means, but we're running out of show here. You had civil rights legislation that was overturned. In that the Brown versus Board of Education, there's several. I think there's over 100 examples of this. But I know those are the ones that really stand out to me. So you got to do. This is something that requires thoughtful discussion. And that's hopefully what this show can be about. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about this latest Supreme Court decision and what it means. Dadgum, I tell you, this is great news for public schools. This could be the best news public schools ever got, have gotten in a long, long time. This is Alan Autry, No Retreat. We'll be right back. Let's go to Lane real quick before we get back to you. Hey, Lane, you're on the line there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, how you doing? Yeah, I'm doing good. Thank you. What's going on?
I just wanted to tell you, hon, you were not disrespectful in any way. What we saw coming out of you was straight up truth. The Spirit of God was on you so heavy, it showed. Yeah. And you were just speaking what God put on your
Well, I appreciate that, Lane, but I did talk over. I interrupted Laura, and I don't want to do that. And I got passionate about it and this and that, and I think it started off wrong, because it's so loaded with emotion. Laura's story is so powerful, and and I appreciate what you're saying. It's just that when I feel, you stand by your principles, whether it costs you. Whatever it costs you. That would be my biggest advice to everybody. Make sure you have unshakable principles, flexible politics, but also be able to admit if you've violated one of your principles. And the biggest thing I'm regretful for is that she was making a point, and it hit a nerve on me, and I came back, and the next thing you know, you had a heated discussion, and I think excuse me. So anyway, I appreciate what you're saying, and I was coming from, I felt a good place, but even with that, you can let your human aspect take over. Excuse me, I'm sorry. You know what I mean? And because she's a good, and she's not the only one. Not the way I got other, emails from other folks saying, they felt I was a little too harsh. And when you get it from multiple sources, you gotta, hopefully I'm man enough to be able to do that. And so anyway, I just hope folks, when we have these kind of dust ups, to know what they're coming from, and that we can stay together as a family, agree to disagree on some things. Because everybody talks about, can we agree to disagree? Yeah. And then that's the end of conversation. They never talk again. Let's agree to disagree and never see each other again.
I think I speak for Autry's Army as well. But
1 minute.
We love that passion in you, because you're not afraid to stand up for what's right. You let God lead you, and we hope that you continue to do that.
Thank you, Lane. I appreciate that. Real quick, we got to go back. How's that boy yours doing?
He is doing good.
Give him
he's
a big.
About to start a new job.
Oh, that's.
He's almost 8 months sober, and he is doing great.
Praise God. All right. Well, you take care, and thank you for the lift. I appreciate you. Thanks, Lane.
30 seconds.
Love you.
Love you too.
Ten seconds.
You're listening to the Alan Autry Show on the best talk in town. Talk Radio 1550 KXEX. Call Alan now. 559-899-1550.
All right, let's get to this Supreme Court decision, not Roe versus Wade. Lord knows we'll be talking a lot about that for a long, long time. But I'm talking about today. The Supreme Court said if you're a teacher and soon to be followed, if you're a student and you feel like praying, you can pray. Because clearly the separation of church and state talked about in the Constitution, which was never phrased that way, separation of church and state. Constitution said there will be no establishment of official religion like they had in England. The Church of England was heavily in bed with King George, and I don't know if literally, but who knows back then. It was crazy. But they had way too much power. As an official church became a political body imbued and partnered with the government to really abuse people's rights. And that's why this country came into being. People wanted to flee that religious oppression and have freedom to worship whatever they wanted to, whoever they wanted to, in the public square. Okay? So this whole separation of church and state, let me qualify this so you understand. I love my church. I mean, I have a lot of churches that I love here. Cornerstone Church, New Cove, you can go on and on. Cross City. My first church is that I go to, have for 30 years, is People's Church here. Started out with G.L. Johnson. Now they got a great pastor there, Dale Oquist. Love that church. They do great things. Strong people of God working every day to fulfill God's mission for their life. Feed the hungry. I mean, support missions all over the world. I mean, they're a church on fire. They're good, strong church. I don't want them running Fresno. I don't want them going down and partner at City Hall where the City Hall folks there, the City Council, has to get permission from People's Church to do something. I don't want that. Separation of church and the state is good. The separation of God and state is disastrous. All you have to look in the Constitution, how many times in the Declaration of Independence, how they referred to God. They needed God. All the founding fathers said, we find these truths to be self-evident, that every individual, sound like Joe Biden here now, you know the thing. It just says certain rights, certain inalienable rights, of which are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, endowed by their creator to have these rights. Okay, and the preamble to the Constitution, he says, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but just gets right to the point, that we're going to enumerate all these Bill of Rights to secure the blessings, not only for our generation, talking about them back then, but for posterity, meaning you and I. They were thinking about you and I and our children and grandchildren. They knew they had to call on God. God in the Constitution, God in the Declaration of Independence, God in the government, in the public square, was always the intention of the founding fathers. In fact, to remove that, they knew our days would be numbered. Because without God, the ability to free speech would be the ability to abuse everybody. The freedom to gather would just become the freedom to create a mob. You know, they knew, and I forget who said it, I believe it was Ben Franklin, said this type of freedom will only work on a moral people. Okay? So this whole thing, all the Supreme Court did today was rule it was unconstitutional to keep a coach from praying on the 50-yard line after a game, and the students voluntarily joined him in Bremerton, Washington, where this took place. Coach Joe Kennedy had been doing it from 2005 to 2011, I believe, somewhere around there. And then the school suspended him. And, way to go, Joe. You said, I'm not going to take this. I'm not going to take this. I'm going to take this on my knees. But they didn't know on his knees meant that he went to his knees and God said, fight this. And him being an obedient child of God, he did. And he has freed, through this Supreme Court decision, so many of these teachers that now will be able to give a student some hope. And I'm not talking about proselytizing where you're trying to convert somebody to a particular religion, but be able to tell a student what God has meant to your own life as a teacher. Be able to see that teacher, that kid seeing you pray, because they may come up and say, "Hey, why are you praying, teacher?" Well, right then, by the law, you can tell them anything you want. All things are the wraps are off, and this is a good thing. This is a really good thing. This is literally a godsend by the Supreme Court to have the courage, right on the heels of hitting their life threatened. Brett Kavanaugh, Coney Barrett, all of those folks, Neil Gorsuch, they're withstanding death threats every single day. And to let that not affect not only the Roe versus Wade decision, but now to say, you know what? You want to talk about a big double down on freedom and the Constitution? We're going to tell you, you can't stop somebody from acknowledging God, no matter where that individual is. It's a huge, huge day. You know, you can track, you can do your research. In 1960, I believe it was, 1960, school, up until 1960, you had school prayer. You had time where you could pray before class started. Some of them had a teacher lead it, but others just had a moment of silence, or just a few minutes, where a kid was allowed to pray or just get their thoughts together. And it was great. It really helps kids. We know that because it was ended in 1960. And you can track the downward spiral of this country socially from that point on. Teenage pregnancies going up, violence going up, a total breaking down of our valued, precious institutions, the respect for authority going down. I mean, it became... and we are where we are today, a divided country that really is trying to find its identity again. Who are we? Well, we're a nation founded on the principles of God, faith, family, and freedom. That's what we say on this show. That's what I think we're founded on. And so anyway, that's a huge, huge decision today. And I just, through some of the darkest times, and we're going through some very difficult times in this old world of ours, to have this happen, to me, again, I think it's nothing less than a godsend to have this court make this ruling. And I know there's a lot of teachers out there all across this country and in California. Don't buy that every teacher out there is some person who's godless, Marxist. There's a lot of them. There just is. There's a lot of them all over in California and across the nation. But let me tell you, there's a lot of teachers that have been operating under a spiritual straitjacket that was put on them, and it breaks their heart that they don't have that tool to be able to share with the child that needs it the most. Again, not in the spirit of proselytizing, but just to be able to talk about God openly and be able to pray. Because these kids these kids learn from what their role models do, probably more than what they say. They see a preacher, a teacher praying before class, just taking a moment to do a quick prayer. That's going to mean something to that kid. They're going to see that their teacher's a praying teacher. Their curiosity can get spurred because they're going to see someone who's given their life to helping them. Just make no mistake, 99% of teachers are really smart people. They got a teaching credential. That's not easy. With that intellect and that work ethic to become a teacher, they could go into lines of work to be paid twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times in the private sector than what they're making as a public school teacher. They choose to take that route because somewhere in their life, a heart was woven and stitched together to serve young people and to help young people. So make no mistake, if you're a teacher out there listening, these out of control kids that seem to not be listening to anything, they're watching you. And the kid that you least expect it from, you're his or her role model. I know that to be true. So you've just been given, I believe, a gift from God through the Supreme Court today with that ruling. I just looked up here. We're going to go to break here, but I'm not going to go to break because I'm going to go to Laura Fisher. Laura,
yeah,
are you there? Are you still mad at me?
I never was mad at you.
I know you weren't. That's what I suspected that. Might be disappointed, but we get disappointed in friends.
Hurt and sad.
Yes.
Hurt and sad because I expect more from you.
Yeah. Well, it's again, I expect in terms of interrupting you and some things that I expect more from myself too.
So I think Friday's show should be an example of what not to do.
Well, it could be in some aspects, but again, I don't want to let a little bit of yeast ruin the whole thing. I think to have those, if that's what people get out of it, totally, if that's it, if it begins and ends with that, hey, that's a great lesson. I happen to believe there's more to that there. That's just my own personal belief. There's a lot of things that were discussed I think where folks get in trouble that want to discuss the subject of Roe versus Wade and abortion in general, they conflate the legal with the moral. I think we just lost. Did we lose Laura? Okay. I'll just go ahead and I think, and then we'll take a break in just a second here. But since it's on, I don't know if she hung up or got disconnected or what have you. But when you conflate the moral aspects of abortion with the legal aspects of it, in terms of what we just talked about with the Supreme Court decision, that's where I think you're walking into a lot of potential trouble. Because you have to distinctly separate those two and make sure you discuss it from that perspective and not let it, and it's very, very difficult because you can start talking about it in purely a legal context. Did the Supreme Court have the ability or the right, the legal right to make this decision, or did it belong in the states? And there's enough to discuss and argue on that for days and days and days. But then you have the moral aspects of it, which then that's when you got to check yourself because it's so loaded with emotion. I don't know if you can even take all the emotion. Probably not. I know I can't. Laura, I don't think anybody can. But it's about being able to constrain that emotion so you can have hopefully a discussion that ends with people having a better understanding of each other's position. By that, I mean people who support the right of a woman to terminate a pregnancy at any time, and those who say the unborn have rights at a certain point, either from inception or 15 weeks or whatever, that when in this individual's mind that fetus goes from a fetus to a human being that has rights, and they're coming from that perspective, that is a difficult discussion. But that's one we have to have, I think, because not that it will ever be settled before the good Lord comes and takes us all home, but I think it's a very good point. In the Bible said, Jesus says, let's sit down and reason together. So anyway, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I hope to get to this Ukrainian situation, this war, this military operation, as Putin says, because we haven't talked about that in a while. Some really big things happening there. Oh, folks, I went and saw Elvis this weekend, Saturday night. Really good movie. I recommend it highly. A little long, but if you're an Elvis fan, they did a really good job with this, I think. And those young people who may have heard of Elvis but just don't know why everybody went gaga for him back in that day and why people are so enamored with him, us oldsters, this will give you a little glimpse into why. And I think the director does a great job. Tom Hanks is stellar as always. And this Austin Butler, I think's his name, plays Elvis. Oh, it's uncanny. He's got every move down, and they cover a lot in his life. And I think they do a really, really good job. So I recommend it highly. And my son's movie's coming out September 23rd. We'll keep you posted on that. One of those horror movies. But the start of a career. And the director said he did a good job, and producers and fellow actors, so I'm looking forward.
One minute. $30 seconds.
You're listening to the Alan Autry Show on the best talk in town. Talk Radio 1550 KXEX. Call Alan now. 559-899-1550.
Hey, welcome back to Alan Autry No Retreat. I was going to go, I'm looking at the time here, into the Ukraine situation. I'm going to save that for tomorrow for Taco Tuesday with Bullet Bob and Guillermo. I want to stay on this issue of Roe versus Wade and kind of get in a little deeper into my take on my feelings on this, my positions on this as a man. And I know this irritates a lot of people, but I think as a man, I do have a right to speak out on this issue. I don't buy into, I think the men have really taken advantage of that situation to shirk their responsibilities of being a father. Quite honestly, I think in our society has suffered fatherlessness. I have a mentoring organization where we mentor at-risk kids. Over 90% are fatherless. Father just got pregnant, took off. Hey, it's her responsibility. And that ain't good. That's what was done to me when I was a child, to my mother. And that's not something I appreciate. And I'm going to hold men accountable that decide that or become fathers because they make the choice to do that and they do it the responsible way, or they just flippantly think, so what? I get someone pregnant, I can always walk away. It's her responsibility, her body, her choice. Hey, that's going to be the same thing when the baby's born too, right? That's what men do. They just, and that's, I'm going to go out and make a judgment on that. That's flat out wrong for a man to do that. Once that baby is starting to form, you are a father. Whether you've said vows of matrimony or not, you're a daddy. And you have certain responsibilities that you have to live up to, I feel. But in this discussion, we have the legal aspect of it. We talked a little bit about my position on the Supreme Court ruling on this. Now I want to get into the moral aspect. Okay, here we go. Where you get in trouble. And we got about 10 minutes left here, and whatever I leave hanging, we'll pick up tomorrow. But as I said, I think it's very important in the context that you discuss this, or you can't have a civil conversation that gets anybody, that gets progress towards understanding, mutual understanding on this. Because the goal is hopefully out of mutual understanding, the anger will come down, and you can agree to disagree on some things and hopefully work together and make a better world on other issues. Okay? That's the whole goal. And the context is extremely important. And let me start with this. If you buy the context that life once began is precious, and it is a life, then it has a right, that life, to be protected, especially if that life cannot protect itself. Now you say, well, life, people think, everybody thinks life's precious. Not so fast. Bill Maher said on his show, and he was serious as a heart attack. He says, I don't think life is precious. I don't know these people that are having the abortions and their babies. The baby's life's not precious to me. Flat out said it. Go look it up. There is that point, that point of view with some folks. But let's take for discussion's sake at this point, because if you don't think it's precious, none of this applies. You don't even discuss it. Mind's made up. How can you make something precious into somebody's mind who's made their mind up that life is not important to be protected? You don't think it's important? You don't think it's important enough to protect. But if you do believe at some point a fetus becomes a child, and with that child comes certain sovereignty, that even though in the woman's body, it now has 2 eyes, legs, a brain, a heart, and with that comes rights. And the Constitution says everyone has a right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. If you notice, the first one was life. There's a right to that. So then when that happens, is that at 15 weeks? Is that at inception? When is that? That's the big discussion. But when it gets to that point, if you believe life is precious and it believes that life should be protected and have certain rights, once that's established, then it kicks in. And what kicks in is really not a equitable or equal input of protection. And I'll explain what I mean by that in just a moment. But I want to make an example that, once you're born, you've grown up, and you're an adult, you can protect yourself. You can go buy a gun. This Supreme Court ruling says to protect your life. When the police aren't doing it, defunding the police, whatever, you can carry a gun to protect yourself. But a child in the womb doesn't have that protection. Now, here's where I'm going to get into some difficulty, but I got to say it because this is what I believe. And I'm going to run a lot of people off, I know, probably, on this. But I believe the raising of a child at a particular time with a mother and a father, there's extra responsibilities that fall at particular times on a mother and a father to protect that child. Again, if you believe that child has a right to be protected. In the womb, it's the right of that mother, it's the responsibility of that mother, the enhanced responsibility to protect that child by any means necessary. Make sure you eat right. You don't drink. You don't put a lot of toxins in there. You make sure you don't engage in, really bad physical activities. You're not going to be an MMA fighter when you're pregnant. Take care of the kid. And if you're like in my case, the husband is father abusive. You get that child out of that environment, like my mother did. You protect that child. Now, yes, the father at that time has a responsibility to protect that child as well, to make sure that mother is protected in all ways possible. You take care of that mother. You help her get what she needs, and even more on top of that. Okay? Then when the baby is born, there's an enhanced responsibility that goes to that father. And this is where we get in trouble. Yes, the mother still is responsible to a great degree. You're both responsible for the welfare of that child. But that child is too small to take care of itself, can't feed itself, can't dress itself, and you're both responsible. But then the father's responsible in an enhanced way with an extra responsibility to provide food for that child and the mother, provide clothing for that child, that mother, provide a roof over the head for that child, to make sure no harm comes from outside to that child. You fathers out there, in particular speaking to ones who just walk away. Don't pay any alimony. Don't pay any child support. Just say, hey, they look at the gal, hey, where, my body, my child? Hey, it was all yours. Then it's born, now it's all mine. It was yours in the womb as well, dude. You had responsibilities to that child while it was in the womb. Now you have extra responsibilities. Grow up. You don't want them? Tough luck. You got them. It's called fatherhood. And that extra responsibilities on you as a father to do everything, and if need be, give your own life to protect that child from harm. That's the deal of having a child. And I think that's what's happened. We've made getting someone getting pregnant, the ease in which you can go get an abortion that this country had gotten to, and especially the African American community. 10 million little black babies killed since 1973 till that Supreme Court decision the other day. That's a low estimate. You know why American Planned Parenthood's going apoplectic? Not because they care about women's health. There's some that do. They do some good things. But their big money maker is selling those aborted fetuses. It's one of the most lucrative black markets out there, and Planned Parenthood, through our laws, made it legal. En masse. Getting paid. And then the system from the 1960s, you started making it more advantageous for a young lady to have more kids because the government was going to give you more money. So in essence, the government became the daddy and your husband. It devastated minority communities under the guise of helping them and compassion. Fathers just took off. And the government said, well, we can fill that role. You go ahead, instead of holding fathers accountable. And once you get someone pregnant, us men, need to be held accountable. There should be some consequences of just walking away and letting that mother make all of these decisions. Especially in many cases when you're the one that coerced her into getting an abortion. How disgusting. So anyway, I guess you can see I'm feeling strongly about this. The show's running out. We got 50 seconds to go. But that, in a nutshell, is where I stand on the issue. I know some people are going to agree. Probably a lot of people not going to agree. Going to hate me for it. I wish you didn't. Some people are going to hang up on me. That's okay. That's your choice. I'm going to still love you. But I'll be danged if I'm going to move off the position I just stated right now. It will never happen until they put me in the grave. And then I'll find out with the good Lord whether he's happy with me or not. Folks, God bless you. God bless America. And just remember, do your best. Let God do the rest, because that's all he expects of you. So that's all you need to expect from yourself. Do your best. Let him do the rest. We'll see you tomorrow on Taco Tuesday. Bye-bye now.
Keep smiling until then.